coffee. I love it. And most of us have heard that coffee grounds are great for our gardens. Although sometimes we hear they're not good for our gardens. Which way is it? And why should we want to use them anyway? In today's video, I want to share with you the 3 benefits to using coffee grounds with your plants and trees, as well as 3 negatives, 3 potential cons to using coffee grounds in your garden, and the 3 ways that I use them the most in my own garden. Now, after we talk about the coffee grounds and how to use them best, I do want to share with you about my coffee plants. If you saw my video about 9 months ago, I experimented with planting coffee seeds this year and they did fabulous. I've potted them up several times and as you can see, the results are promising. So after we talk about coffee grounds, I'm going to talk just a little about coffee trees and how you have the potential, like me, excitingly, to grow your own coffee, to roast it, grind it, and drink it yourself in just a few years' time if, well, you're a little lucky. Hi, I'm Kim, and this is all of City Oasis, and today it's all about the coffee. So the 3 pros, the 3 benefits to using coffee grounds with your plants in your garden and with your trees are, number 1, acidity. So coffee grounds are slightly acidic. And if you add them to your soil, it's going to make the soil slightly acidic. Now, fresh grounds, not brewed, are more acidic than brewed grounds. And you probably shouldn't use fresh grounds. Not only would that be a lot more expensive because you wouldn't have had the fun and enjoyment of drinking the coffee from them, but they might be a little too acidic. But even if you use a soil that is meant for acid-loving plants, such as a citrus soil, over time with watering, that acidity will start to leach out of the plant. And so, to add it back in, you can use different things to acidify your soil. They have, of course, soil acidifiers in the stores that you can buy, but you can also help it out with your own homegrown acidifying agents, such as brewed coffee grounds, which will help the soil just enough to where it will truly benefit from it. Do you hear that? That is a frog under my camera. One moment. Well, hi. 2 frogs. Let me just relocate them. Now, not all plants love an acidic soil. For instance, asparagus, beets, rosemary, lavender, geranium, aloe vera. None of those want an acidic soil, but plenty of plants do. Of course, your citrus trees, but also hydrangeas, rhododendrons, blueberries, roses, azaleas, and maybe a few you haven't heard about, carrots and cucumbers, peppers, potatoes, and radishes. Now, this doesn't mean you go dump a bunch of coffee grounds in the soil around these plants. No, you have to be careful with it, but it does benefit them if you do it right. And we'll talk about the 3 ways you can do that in just a moment. And what is the second benefit coffee grounds can give your plants? That is improved soil structure. Coffee grounds added to soil are going to do several things. Of course, they're adding nutrients, but also they're aerating it and they help the soil to retain moisture, just an overall improved structure. Now, the third benefit of coffee grounds being added to your garden soil, to your pots where you're growing your trees and your flowers and, yes, your veggies, is nitrogen. I mentioned that coffee grounds add nutrients to your soil. Nitrogen is the top one. And this is essential for plant growth. In addition to the nitrogen, there's also some potassium and phosphorus involved, as well as some other minor minerals. But nitrogen, really important for plant growth, and it's really helped my plants. So what are the 3 cons you need to be aware of? Well, one is a buildup of salt. After a while, over time, eventually, adding coffee grounds, especially to your pots, will result in a buildup of salt. And that's not good for your plants. But if you're watering regularly, you can flush those salts out. So as long as you're aware of it, it's not going to be an issue. The second con would be a problem with mold. Now, this is really only going to happen if you apply coffee grounds to your plants that are super wet. And because they're in a wet clump, that, as you know, can result in mold. If you put it on way too thickly, especially, this can be an issue. However, if you wait till your coffee grounds are dry and make sure they're not matted in a clump, you're not going to have an issue with mold at all. The third con that you should just sort of have at the back of your mind is the issue of caffeine. Now, caffeine only in huge amounts would be toxic to your plants. Really, it's not much of an issue because after it's been brewed, most of the caffeine has been put into your coffee cup and then into you. And although you might read that the caffeine is toxic, all that really means is if you put too much, say, on a plant, it would slow down its growth for, say, 6 months to a year. It's not a long-term issue. But if you're careful with how much you're using, it's not going to come up at all. Now, I mentioned that when I use coffee grounds on my plants, especially my citrus trees, I've noticed that they benefit so much from the nitrogen that's in them. But let me clarify that this is not a short-term thing. You're not going to put coffee grounds around the base of your plant one day and then 2 or 3 days later see this big takeoff in growth. That would happen from a much more concentrated, often man-made fertilizer, as opposed to a natural fertilizer, which is what we're using the coffee grounds as. So how do I use the coffee? What are the 3 ways I use it, and which way do I prefer? Because I definitely prefer one over the other 2. I'd say I use coffee grounds in an 80-10-10 manner, meaning I use them one way 80% of the time, and the other 2 ways each 10% of the time. Let's start with the 10%ers. So 10% of the time, I'll take coffee grounds, already brewed, but dried out, and sprinkle them around the base of my plant. Not too much, but not too little, just all around the base. And I do that probably 3 or 4 times a year to plants that like acid. And I make sure they're dry because we don't want any mold growing. And I do not bury this in the soil. If I've got a plant growing there, whether it's in a pot or a raised bed, I don't want to bury the coffee grounds right there by the roots because the roots could get burned. And in addition, the nitrogen that is in these coffee grounds isn't available right away. Like I said, it takes a little while to break down and be of benefit to the plant when you're putting it directly in a pot or a raised bed. I also like to put some of this in my bed in the late fall or in the winter, so it has time over the course of late fall, winter, and early spring to break down and be of benefit to the plants when I put them in the ground in the spring. Now, the second way I use coffee grounds 10% of the time is as a mulch. This works really well in the summer, especially where I live in Zone 9B, where it's intensely hot for 5 months of the year. Now, a coffee ground mulch, especially when combined with some shredded leaves, helps your plants in 3 ways. Number 1, that mulch is going to suppress any weed growth that could come up around the base of your plant. Number 2, it helps retain moisture, like any mulch does for your plant. And thirdly, like a good mulch does, it's going to keep those roots cool even in the blazing heat. And then the added perk is that over time, it is going to break down over the following seasons into a nitrogen-rich fertilizer for your plant. That is also slightly acidifying the soil. Wow, I had to change positions. The sun suddenly came out and was blinding me. All right, so what is the way that I usually use coffee grounds? The way I use it 80% of the time, the way it works best for your plants? Well, it's to compost it. Now, you're going to add the coffee grounds, which are a green addition. If you know browns and greens, how you need to balance them in your compost, well, even though coffee grounds are a dark brown, they're a green addition to your compost, as are things like kitchen scraps and eggshells. And then you want to balance it, of course, with your brown materials like your leaves and your pine needles, which also are slightly acidic, and some wood ash, although you don't want to put too much of that in because, that would be kind of clumping if you put it all at once. I like to put my wood ash from my wood burning stove in my compost, but I sprinkle it lightly and I don't do too much at once. But yes, composting coffee grounds is by far the best way because it gives the chance for the microbes, microorganisms to break down all the coffee grounds and make the nitrogen available to your plants. A combination of shredded leaves and some grass clippings, some kitchen scraps, and coffee grounds, or even just leaves and coffee grounds, results in a fantastic, rich, beautiful compost for your plants come spring. This is a great compost to add to not only your containers, but also all your raised beds, your in-ground gardens, and your trees. Don't forget your trees. My citrus trees just love this compost, and they definitely show the positive results from this compost pretty quickly when I put it on them in the spring. All right, time to talk about the coffee trees now. Before we do that though, I just wanted to say, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel and you like these kinds of videos, well, go ahead and do so. It's free and easy, and I would love for you to join me here at City Oasis on a regular basis. So let's talk about my coffee trees. I've got 3 of them growing, as I showed you. Listen, I started 12 seeds in the early spring, back in mid-February. 4 grew. Now, my research had said that I would be lucky if even 1 or 2 of the seeds actually sprouted. Coffee was apparently notorious for not starting from seeds, but 4 of them did. And after a few weeks, I took those seedlings and put them into 4-inch pots. And then sadly, about 6 or 8 weeks later, 1 of the 4 died. I have no idea why. They were all treated exactly the same. I grew them on my bathroom counter. I have a window in there, so they got some light, but not too much light. And they were in a humid environment, which they seem to appreciate. And I didn't forget to water them because I was seeing them all the time. And about 2 months ago, I potted them up to this larger pot. Now, coffee plants like a slightly acidic soil, so I've done that for them. And they don't like to be too wet, so you have to be careful about that, but you also don't want them to completely dry out. They do not like temperatures below 32 degrees. So in their young state, I'm definitely not leaving them outside. This winter, they'll stay in my bathroom. However, come spring, I am going to move them into a place where they get morning sunshine, plenty of it, but afternoon shade. And that's because although they are a heat-loving plant, they're not going to like the intense dry heat I get here, where the temp goes up to 105 to 115 Fahrenheit regularly. So we'll keep them in the afternoon shade. And then by next winter, I may actually keep them outside. We'll see how they do. But if I do, they'll stay right next to my house on the south side, where they will be a few degrees warmer than anywhere else on the property. Now, it only gets down into the mid to upper 20s Fahrenheit a few times a winter. And if I'm careful, I can watch for that, maybe cover them or bring them into the carport at that time so they'll be sheltered. But at least 1 of them, I think I'm going to do that with, if not all 3 by that point, because they will keep growing. By next fall, a year from now, they're probably going to be 6 to 8 feet tall. And the following year, I'm going to be probably having, hopefully, coffee berries. At first, I'll probably just get a few. The coffee berries grow on 1-year-old wood. Even though the first year, I'll probably only get enough berries for 1 cup of coffee, that's still going to be great fun. I love experimenting, and I look forward to the day that I'm growing several coffee trees, tall and beautiful and fruiting. I think that will be so cool, and I'll definitely enjoy the coffee. You know, a lot of people told me, you can't grow coffee. It gets too cold in the winter where you are, and coffee trees are finicky. You can have a little house plant, but, you know, there's not enough light in your house to make them produce berries. And I thought, you know, I'm going to try anyway. And so I'm going to supplement them with light in the house. And I might try to grow 1 tree in the house permanently with plenty of light by a sunny window, maybe keep it pruned down to like 7 feet tall and see if I can get to fruit in the house. But I want to start some more coffee plants this year so I can have maybe 6 or 8 trees outside and find, you know, the microclimate they like and eventually be producing plenty of coffee. Definitely something I'd like to be self-reliant in. How about you? Do you like growing things that you regularly consume and enjoy eating or drinking? I do, so I'm having a lot of fun with my coffee plants, and you can too. It's not hard at all. At least not yet. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, I just wanted to highlight this cup here. Isn't it gorgeous? Watercolor, hummingbird. What more could you ask for? These are high quality coffee mugs that I just really enjoy. And this particular brand puts out many beautiful designs. And I like the way the inside is colored. It's microwave and dishwasher safe. You know, I have to say, I have a few of these, and some of them I use for coffee, like this one, and a few I use on my desk to hold pencils and such, because they're just so beautiful. So I'll link them in the description below, just in case you're interested, either for yourself or for a gift, in any of the bird mugs available on Amazon through this brand. So let me know in the comments if you think you might try growing coffee. And thanks for joining me today. Have a great week, and I will see you again next time.